Welcome to the Body Smart Podcast, where we remove roadblocks to fitness and health to empower you to master your health habits. We help you become Body Smart.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Body Smart Vodcast. Special guest today in here with us, Josh Korn. We just did an awesome VO2 max test with him. Really fun to see. So if he's a little short of breath, that's why. No, he crushed it and he did really well. He's recovered well. So we've got his results right here. But we thought we'd interview him. He's such a great athlete. Really fun to see how he does. So he is an ultra distance runner. So he loves to be up in the mountains is kind of the biggest thing. He's a mountain runner. Has some cool stuff on the horizon, as well as has done some pretty cool racing in the last couple of years. So Josh, welcome.
Thank you.
Fun to have you on. And so I want to dive in a little bit to kind of who you are and what you do. So tell us a little bit more about Josh and how you kind of got started into this world of ultra distance running.
Oh, geez. All right. Well, I want to thank my my middle school track teacher, our track
Nice.
coach. Give a shout out there to Mrs. Johnson. She got me going.
That's awesome.
Back when I was 12 or whatever.
That's cool.
Always been a runner. I mean, been running for a long time.
Yeah. If you start at 12, that's pretty awesome.
Pretty little guy.
Yeah.
Still little, but just kind of the mountains just really were kind of an inspiration to me. Moved out here to Utah about 8 years years ago, and up until that point, grew up in Wisconsin. Not a whole lot of mountains in Wisconsin.
Not a lot of mountains,
right?
yeah.
So a lot of dirt road running for me growing up, but always kind of had that inspiration and made the move. So
awesome.
It's been great.
Yeah. What brought you out to Utah then?
Work, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, worked for Solomon for 6 years.
Awesome.
So great company. It was great.
They are a great company.
Yeah, they wanted to bring me out here and play around a little bit, so it was a good time.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, it's a good place to be. If you like being outdoors, there's not much better place to be than Utah, right?
Absolutely.
There's just a lot to do and a lot of terrain to cover. I still am discovering stuff, even literally in my own backyard all the time.
Right.
Like the mountain behind my house, I still discover stuff all the time. Then like, oh, that's so cool. I didn't know that was there.
I know. I mean, I always end up kind of running the same trails, the same mountains, and it's just like, gosh, it's right in my backyard.
Right.
Like I have a really hard time even wanting to drive to Salt Lake to run or anywhere else really, because we have it so good right here.
Oh, so good. Oh, I feel like Davis County and Ogden is like such an undiscovered place, because you go to Salt Lake, beautiful mountains and things, but you're like nose to butt with other people on the trail.
Absolutely.
And here I run all the time without seeing another person.
It's perfect.
So
awesome.
I love it. Yeah, me too. I kind of am a little bit of a solitary creature.
Yeah, I think we all are.
Yeah, it's fun. If you like being up in the mountains, I think that solitude really is pretty nice.
Yes.
Like, to just be alone. So, all right. So you mentioned at one point that you were a bit of a road runner. You ran road more.
Mm-hmm.
What did you have much of a career or journey there?
Track in high school, obviously. Cross country. Ran cross country in college a little bit.
Cool.
I think it probably was just the nature of where I grew up.
Yeah.
We didn't have the mountains we have here, so of course we had a lot of pavement to pound, and that was just kind of part of it. I'm a Nordic skier, cross-country skier. Ever since, basically I could walk, right?
That's how you got to school in Wisconsin, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's how I got to school. It paid for my school, it paid for my college, it did all of that.
Cool.
So, I mean,
cool.
super blessed to just have that. My parents got me out there in my little snow pants when I was 2 years old, and
that's awesome.
Thank good for that,
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's great. Cool. I didn't realize. Do you compete then at that level? Too?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
That's fun.
That's my winter activity, and then the mountain running ends up being the summer gig. So
that's cool. Keep the fitness up in both realms.
Absolutely.
It's hard to keep your fitness up for kind of that ultra distance running in the winter time, because it's hard to get that many miles in.
Totally.
So to have a different sport that is really pretty applicable still.
Yep.
Same muscle groups and things like that. And then incorporating the upper body so much too. That's awesome.
I mean, I think that's probably what, knock on wood, has kind of kept me going and kept me as healthy as I am, is just simply, it comes to be the middle of November, shut it down on the feet and just, slap those skis on and really pretty much do that until the end of March, as long as we have a good snow year. and then
fingers
take a
there,
nice little break in April, and then ramp up the running in May, and it just seems to be a really good balance for me.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Keeps you healthy, keeps you having something to cross train with and for. Definitely is a great game plan.
Yeah.
And I like that the motions are fairly similar.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, quite a bit different, but cycling is kind of people's number one go-to. And I feel like it's such a different motion and trains your muscles in such a different way that there's a big learning curve as you switch back and forth. Whereas I feel like Nordic really would keep you in pretty good shape for running still.
I mean, I think it's the hardest sport out there. I mean, it's just, you just think about the demands that are put on your body, your abilities to deal with the elements, whether it's really cold or, all of those type of things.
Yeah.
I think it just kind of makes you tougher, grittier, and it's a good thing.
Yeah, well, it definitely can push that mental aspect of the endurance game, which, and honestly, when you're running 50 or 100 miles, the mental aspect is probably one of the most, anyway, difficult things to overcome. Have you ever tried biathlon, like shooting as well?
You would think so. Growing up in Wisconsin, right? We got a lot of critters out there to shoot. But no, I've never done that. I've thought about it, but it never really crept in.
Never crept in.
Yeah.
Just wondering.
No, that's a good question.
So I've always, when I cross country ski, I'm always like, how in the world can people shoot? Like, my heart is just pounding right now. Like, how can you shoot? Because I like to shoot and I like to cross country ski, but man, I don't know how people do both.
No, I've got some good friends that have made the switch, and I mean, to be honest, not to knock on those friends, but you don't need to be nearly as good a skier to be a very elite biathlete. You got to shoot really well,
right?
Yeah,
so, that makes sense.
So you couldn't quite hack it as a Nordic skier.
Right.
Learn to shoot and you'll be all right.
There you go. That's funny. So as you've transitioned then into the ultra distances and stuff like that, you've run a fair number of them, right? What what do you feel like was the biggest challenge making that transition from more of road through college and everything to that ultra distance athlete?
I think it was probably multifaceted. I think first and foremost it was getting the hours. As a Nordic skier, we're thinking much more along the idea of training volume, not necessarily miles. Whereas like on the road, it's like, hey, if I'm not doing a 100-mile week, I'm not going to be able to compete. Whereas I'm in the mentality, hey, if I'm not training 15 or 16 hours a week, that's much more my my mindset. So I think the transition from a Nordic skier to running on technical trails makes a lot more sense, because someone like myself, a big week for me, 75, maybe 80 miles a week, maybe. I mean, that's a lot of on time. That's a lot of hours. Because we're not moving that fast in the mountains necessarily, right? Yeah. So
that is a lot of time.
So I think that transition really makes sense. I don't know if I answered the question at all.
No. To me, that brings up a really interesting point. I'm glad you went there, because I tell people, because I'm the metabolic geek, right? I tell people that all the time. I would rather someone train for the amount of time rather than the mileage. I feel like that speed becomes the natural consequence of training your body to be metabolically active at the level you want it to be active for the right amount of time. So if I want to finish a marathon in 3 hours, I've got to have my body be able to be metabolically active at a high enough rate for 3 hours.
Right.
And then the pace will be a natural result to where I speed up and speed up and speed up within that same metabolic range as I train. And so I kind of think of it more along the way that you're thinking of, like, let's focus on the number of hours that I'm training, because that will lead to the right metabolic effects. Because sometimes when we focus just on mileage, you can get your pace in the day, or you can stick to a pace and get your mileage in the day in a certain amount of time, but you can blow yourself up big time.
Absolutely.
Whereas if you focus on the amount of time and you listen to your body more and don't worry about the mileage and just worry more about like staying in your zone and training your body, those metabolic systems of your body, I think you're going to have a better result and risk injury and blowing up a lot less.
Well, I mean, and I work full time, and as a person that's working 40 hours a week, right? It's easier for me to kind of conceptualize and But you're like, all right, so I have physically 15 hours in my week this week.
Yeah.
All things else, take everything else. I have that much time to train or to dedicate towards training.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. It's harder for me to get my head wrapped around, like, well, how long is it going to take me to run 100 miles this week? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to know.
Right.
So
especially mountain where your
Totally.
paces aren't as consistent. Like on road, it's like, I know that I normally run these paces, right?
Yep.
Blah, blah, blah. But I would still argue that even with road running, if you focus more on just getting faster within that window of time,
Yep.
And focusing more on your metabolism, I think people would have a healthier result.
Yep. Absolutely.
Right?
I think so.
And be able to stick with it long enough to get faster.
Sure.
That's my bias.
Yeah.
As the
there you go.
metabolic.
All right. Perfect.
Anyway, so you mentioned that you have a pretty cool opportunity coming up, a race in Europe.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
It's crazy.
Sounds
That's
pretty
what
crazy.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
So it's a two-person stage race.
Yeah.
So it's a point-to-point race. We start in Germany. We finish in Italy, basically. So we're seeing 4 different countries,
Gorgeous.
8 days.
Because that stretch is beautiful.
Unreal, right? So I was
Beautiful.
fortunate enough, a buddy of mine, it's a 2-person race, obviously. So the two of us, we did it 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We learned a ton. We're like, you know what, we got to come back and do this again.
Yeah.
So this spring, we got the invite. They're like, why don't you guys come back and do it again?
That's awesome.
And this time around, I think we're ready to really just kind of crush it out.
Yeah.
So
You've worked out some of the kinks,
we've worked some kinks out. It's
Awesome.
about 170 miles,
Oh,
8
gosh.
days. 60,000 feet of vert, something gnarly like that.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
I mean, you just kind of work those numbers out. It's like,
Yeah, that's a lot of climbing.
it's a lot of everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for every up, there's a down, right?
Exactly.
So-
Yeah, the downs are way worse than the ups. I'll
Oh,
tell
I
you
agree.
that.
Totally agree. Yeah, I don't mind climbing at all, but coming down is tough sometimes.
Yeah.
Right? Beats you up pretty good. So
So-
especially when you gotta then climb again the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, all these numbers that we went through today, I mean, this is going to be super helpful for me
Yeah.
over the course of the next, I guess it's 2.5 months now, really, to really
Yeah.
help me hone in exactly where I need to be at a heart rate, where I need to be nutritionally.
Yeah.
Those are questions that I kind of had. Like, I've
Yeah.
never really gone through the whole metabolic, like, how many calories do I physically need to bring in at
Right.
155 beats per minute? And,
Yeah.
I think just kind of getting that dialed in is the next piece.
Right. Well, it's
So-
super fascinating to look at your results and see that, like, to where, just going from 150 to 160 beats per minute, how your calorie burn changes and how you're really, like, you go from 400 calorie carbohydrate deficit to 530, but then you jump up to 170 and now you're 919.
Yeah.
So from, just a 10 beats per minute increment difference, you almost double the amount of carbs that you're going to have to eat to recover.
Right.
Knowing that from a race strategy perspective,
Yep.
that's huge,
Yeah.
right? Knowing how much fuel you have to have on board, how long you can be in a specific zone. Because you were saying, like, you can sustain 170 for an hour,
Sure.
which is that's pretty elite and pretty awesome right there, just to be able to sustain that for an hour. But the metabolic consequences of that, the amount of food you have to keep eating, because you're going to do that day in, day out for 8 days.
Not sustainable.
Yeah, that's not
Not
sustainable.
even close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you'll definitely bonk. You'll feel terrible. All those things, right? And so, having that information really does help you dial that in a little bit more. So I'm excited to be a small part of that and helping
Sure.
you dial that in. I'm excited to see with future tests. I'd love to see how that changes over time as you use the heart rate zones to train and stuff like that. It's pretty exciting stuff.
Totally.
Anyway, so you've got that coming up. Any other races locally that you're looking at
Oh,
to
man.
kind of prepare?
Yeah, pretty much everything this year is just going to be preparing for that. And
Yeah. So just kind of training races.
training races, yes. I have a 50 miler coming up this next weekend up in Bend, Oregon.
Yeah.
It's called the Old Cascadia 50 miler.
Oh, cool.
It looks absolutely stunning.
Gorgeous,
So a good buddy of mine, Max King, just sent me some pictures, and he's like, dude, you got to get up here. Like it's popping off. Like it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, that's
So-
awesome. Oh, it's got to be so pretty up there.
Oh yeah,
man.
yeah. This time of year, so
Yeah.
that's gonna be a good one for me. It's not gonna be a fast day. It's just gonna be go out there and
Right.
get a nice long day in the mountains, and those are the type of things I need right now.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. gear checks and all that type of stuff, testing out new stuff.
Just get totally dialed. You know,
Right.
We got Ben here hooking up some new inserts.
Right, we've got some right here on the
sitting
table.
Here on the table, yeah. Getting ready just for that race.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to have, a lot of people in my corner here helping me out.
Perfect.
So, yeah, so that's kind of the first one, and then from there I'm gonna kind of switch over to doing some of the shorter races, some of the Cirque Series races. Those are local, those are really great. You know, Julian Carr does such a great job with those races, so that'll be really fun. And we'll see. I'm gonna kind of gauge, see how the body's feeling. I think it's probably gonna be more important for me personally to just train really well for those 2 months and not necessarily put myself in those really big holes that 50 miler can do or 50K can do, right?
Right. Yeah. So the recovery is so much from something like that. Even if you take it pretty easy, it just takes a lot to recover tendons, ligaments, joints, all that stuff. Yeah. As well as that, it puts you in a huge caloric deficit for a while. Yeah. And so digging back out of that so you have enough in reserve for the next race. Totally. It's a big deal.
So I think some shorter, faster stuff is in the pipeline for me. And it seems funny that, you need to be short, you need to do those shorter and faster things, but I think I've learned that just in the last couple of years that I perform a lot better if it's just not short and easy or not long and easy in the mountains every day. Yeah. Right? Like you need to have those interval workouts. You need to stretch all these boundaries that we just kind of went through.
Yeah, they're different zones, and with training within each zone has its own pluses and minuses, right? Yeah. And so being able to push the limits and have the capacity to know where you're at in each of those zones is really important. Totally. We talked about that, how that can help you tackle hills and finish the right way and stuff like that. But I think doing the Cirque Series is actually a really good way to kind of push each of those limits and see where you're at in each of those limits. Like, how long can I stay at Redline, or how long can I stay in my different zones? So that'll be really cool to see how you do with that. Yeah. So Cirque Series, I know Ben is sponsoring the Cirque Series. Yeah. Pretty cool. So Ben with Perfect Feet. So here at Body Smart, we share space with Ben with Perfect Feet. He's been one of our podcast episodes before. Awesome guy. He helps create custom foot solutions. So inserts, shoe modifications, whatever you need. He's awesome that way. And so Josh is one of his test pilot athletes. Yep. So he's got the gear on and everything. And that's been really fun to see Ben working with those athletes. So if you have any foot needs, come see Ben. He's the best.
100%.
Yeah, he really is the best. I was kind of anti-inserts prior to that because everything I'd seen was so garbage. Yeah. And then when I started working with Ben, I'm like, dude, this guy he's like amazing at dialing it in.
I'm 100% with you. I mean, I never thought that I needed inserts. I never thought I needed something custom to my foot. Yeah. And then, it's been about a year and I don't think there's any way to go back at this point.
Right. It's when you get that custom solution, and it's different than just like putting your feet in the molds or casting your feet or whatever and having it shipped off and done. Like, he gets the tolerances down because he modifies it. Well, he makes it and modifies it here in shop. Yeah. He can get those tolerances down to exactly what your
100%.
Yeah, and so it's a totally different experience. It's pretty awesome. Yep. So anyway, there's our plug for Ben. So Josh, you got some pretty cool stuff coming up. What advice would you give to the person trying to train for their first 50 miler or first 100 miler? What would you say there?
Oh, geez. I think it's all about being patient. I think you have to realize that it's not going to be something where you can just flip a switch and be like, hey, I'm going to go do this tomorrow, right? Yeah. It's probably kind of cliche to even say this, but I think you just have to realize that it's going to take time to get to that level where you can compete and do that particular race, right? Yeah. I think varying your training, and that's what I've really learned. Yeah. Like we were talking about before, over the past couple of years, I've really just switched off the running for a good portion of the year because I just know that my body can't take that amount of pounding.
Right. And the same type of
pounding. And I mean, a lot of people can. I mean, a lot of the people living down in Southern California, a lot of people living in those parts of the country where that's what they have. Yeah. That's what they do. But for us living in a situation here where we can alter it up. Yeah. I mean, you look at a lot of the top athletes right now, like on the international scene, and they're skimo racing in the winter, they're Nordic skiing in the winter, they are just not running, period. Yeah. So I think don't be afraid to put the running shoes away for a while. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a huge positive and keeps you injury free, keeps you out of the PT clinic a little bit.
Yeah. Well, that's my goal is I want to keep runners on the road. you think it's bad for business for me to say that.
Sure.
But I would much rather have an athlete come in at the very first hint of like, I think this may be going off, than waiting until they totally have an injury. And so, yeah, I agree. Avoid us as much as possible. Or like find a maintenance plan. So that's a lot of what I'm doing with a lot of my athletes is setting them up on a maintenance plan where they come in regularly, like some once a week, some twice a month type of a thing, where we keep them tuned up so that we don't have to do the full treatment thing.
Sure.
Right. And that I think is key, is do those self-care type things that keep you healthy. And one of those is definitely cross training.
Yeah, and I think just to spin off of that for a second, I mean, I think we got to realize that, not all ultra runners are built the same.
Yeah.
And I think we can get caught up in social media right now and seeing like all these guys, we don't need to drop names here, but I mean, I've got a million of them in my head if we wanted to just talk names, and it's just like guys that, they go really big always. Yeah. And it's like, that's not sustainable.
And for most people, it just isn't sustainable.
No. And you might be really fast for a really long time, and then all of a sudden you're done.
Yeah, and the injury bug hits, and your career. Yeah, it's tough. And some people can sustain that for a while, or other people, like, it's interesting. We joked about man strength just a second ago. There's some people that like ran 60, 70, 80 miles a week for a long, long time, and then got into some of this intense stuff. And so they had 10 years of building that base first before they really started to go real hard or real intense or really long mileage. And so it's kind of, sometimes we get into something and we want to be competitive right away. And some of the people that we're competing against have been doing this for a really long time.
Yeah.
And so their tendons and joints have adapted to that load over a really long period of time.
Yep.
You mentioned the Californians. It's like, yeah, well, they've been doing that for 30 years.
Sure.
And so, like,
yeah,
that's what their body has adapted to.
Sure.
And so we really need to pay attention to that. Like, are we pushing our body beyond what we have adapted to?
Yeah.
And so we just got to be careful that we don't overdo it that way.
Yeah.
And I think that's where time doing other sports helps.
Sure.
How much do you lift?
I'm in the gym right now 3 days a week, and it's simple stuff. It's not like I'm going in there and lifting 8 times my body weight over my head.
Yeah.
It's really simple. A lot of weight bearing stuff. I mean, I do a lot of band work.
Yeah.
Just simple upper body stuff, dips, rowing machine. Things are, it's like, just functional. I just want it to be functionally strong.
Right.
And I mean, obviously, I'm a little bit different than the normal ultra runner because I need to be fitter. I need to be stronger for skiing once ski season comes around.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't just ramp that up in November and think I'm going to have a good year.
Right. Yeah. So you got to stay well rounded.
Yep. And I'm not afraid. I mean, I'm not afraid to carry just a little bit more weight. I mean, I want to be strong, and I think that's a positive. Especially in these harder mountain gritty races. Like, I think being stronger is a good thing.
I agree. I think it helps stave off injury for one. And honestly, when you think about it in terms of, we talk about this a lot with patients with brain injuries and other things, energy conservation principles, but just being 10% stronger so that every step you take requires 10% less strength to complete that. You save a lot of energy in the long run.
Yeah.
Right. And so a little bit but yeah, the effects of strength training really are positive, and so many runners avoid that, especially people looking for those ultra distance races. They think, I just need to just keep running and running. Right. But strength training really is so key to avoiding injury.
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah. And so cool, awesome stuff. Those are some great tips for keeping you going. That cross-training mentality, I think, is really important. I love that you have another sport that you also compete at, so that you keep that edge, that competitive edge. I think that's another thing that we can really think about, is find ways to keep that competitive edge. Cool stuff. Thanks so much, Josh, for joining us.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining the Body Smart Vodcast. If you have questions for Josh, how do people reach you if they want to, or are you open to that? I guess I should have asked that before.
Oh, yeah, you can totally hit me up. Just direct message me on Instagram. Definitely can find me there.
Yeah, so Josh Korn, he's there on Instagram. Awesome stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, we'll see ya.
Thanks for listening to the Body Smart Podcast. Join us in the Body Smart community on Facebook to share your successes or ask a question for our next episode. Now get out there and take the next step toward living your active lifestyle.